to say y'all are lucky, but I think you're very lucky to be here because the Travis County Sheriff's Department has put together a great program for you. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. I think it's going to be very beneficial. I'll talk more about that in a second. But first is the Sheriff of Travis County. He is here right now. Big round of applause for Greg Hamilton.
First of all, I'd like to say good morning, and I would like to thank the individuals that put this event on, that came to me, that talked about doing something about what's happening in our schools, and that's bullying. How many people have heard of all the bullying going on, not only in your school, but around the country? I hope everybody would raise their hand. And that's one of the things that we would like to address, and that's Kelly Page and Florence Brasenio, these two individuals. Please raise your hands. And without the individuals that have these brown uniforms or khaki uniforms on, helping to put this thing on, we wouldn't be able to do it. But also I'd like to thank the school districts. I think we have some athletic, I know we have one athletic director here. Do we have any athletic directors here? Would you please stand? Thank you. I believe we are going to have some superintendents here from school districts. We have superintendents, please stand. Well, we're going to get this party started here. We hope that everyone here find this particular summit or conference educating. We hope that you'll be able to take some things back with you to the school. School's about to crank up. And I think that it is apropos based on the heels of what's happened at the University of Texas right now. I know a lot of you are UT fans, and you see what's happening with the football team. And I think that bystander intervention, if they had that, and if they had the skills or the will to address those particular issues, that they wouldn't be having all the problems that they're having. And I would like for you to take that back to your school. It's time for us to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. And if we're going to make our schools safer, it's going to start with you. It's not going to start with the teacher or the principal or the superintendent or the athletic director. It's time for you to stand up. And one of the reasons that we picked athletes to start this program, hopefully this will grow and we'll reach out to the ROTC, to the band members, to just Joe Citizen that's in the school district, that individuals will start standing up for each other. Because it's important to keep your classroom, your school district safe. And it's up to you to stand up. I used to be an athlete myself about 100 pounds ago. What are you laughing at? But I used to be part of a group, and we used to stand up. I know when I was going to high school, we had individuals that would pick on individuals all the time. It was individuals that were scared to not strike back, but to speak up. And there was athletes that stood up for these individuals. And I challenge each and every one of you today to make a commitment before you leave this conference, this summit, that you make a commitment that you're going to do everything possible to start standing up for those who can't stand for themselves. Thank you all for being here. I know that you all could be doing a lot of things, but you chose to come here, and that shows that you have an initial commitment. But today, let's solidify it at the end of this day that you're going to do something at your school and make it a safer place. Thank you all.
My name is Dwayne Goodrich. I'm 36 years old, and I'm going to take you all on my journey that I went from a snotty-nosed kid on the south side of Chicago to the #1 defensive player in the country in high school, 2-time All-SEC player at the University of Tennessee, 2nd-round draft pick by the Dallas Cowboys, spending 6 years of my life in prison, to now being a recent college graduate. So, back when I was in Chicago, my oldest brothers, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Chicago, but my 3 older brothers, they were all gang-related, all affiliated, all sold drugs. But the age gap between my brothers is so much different than mine. They're 5, 7, and 8 years older than me, so my parents got the chance to see what they did wrong with my brothers. and decided to put me in sports at an early age. And I started playing football about 5 years old, and I didn't like it. My mom, I mean, I know the price now is a little bit higher, but my mom signed me for $35. And I remember telling her the first day, I'm like, that's too hot, I can't do this. So she was like, well, you're not gonna waste my $35. So, I'm glad that she kept me in it. Obviously always be where I am today. So, playing early on, when I knew that I loved football, Walter Payton was my favorite player, and I just liked the whole team atmosphere. I liked going out there competing against other kids because I used to get whooped on by my brother so much, so it was finally a chance for me to whoop on somebody my own age. So I set goals as a kid. My goal, believe it or not, when I was 5 years old, I wish I had a picture to show you guys. I was in a Dallas Cowboys uniform. Now, coming from Chicago, that's another. But I told my parents that I wanted to play for the Dallas Cowboys. So at 5 years old, I had a goal. And I'm gonna talk to you guys about goal setting and how important goal setting is and how I went from setting goals all the way until I got to Dallas. And I can tell you when that changed my life looking back at it now. So, I set goals, and it wasn't until about 7th grade that I really realized that I was good in football. I knew that I was okay, but it wasn't until then I started getting recruited by some of the best high schools around the Chicago area. And so as we got up there, the demographics is a little bit different. We have Catholic schools, and then we have the public schools. The Catholic schools are the best schools to go to. So I ended up going to a school in the south suburbs called Hillsborough Richards. Now, coming from the inner city, I didn't know any white people at all. Until I got to high school. So my first experience with white people was in high school. It was a definite culture shock for me. So I get to high school, and I remember coming in, and my coach telling me, the varsity coach was telling me, hey, you're going to be a leader here, you're going to be a great player. And I'm 5'9", 130 pounds, something like that. I'm just here just trying to do what everybody else is doing. So I remember freshman year, I got into a fight. And I went to school out of district, so it was already a no-no. So going to school out of district, I ended up getting into the fight. I ended up getting suspended for 5 days. And I remember the coach told me, he was like, well, Dwayne, he was like, if you do anything like this, you're gonna be kicked out of school. He was like, you almost blew an opportunity of a lifetime. I'm like, it's a fight that I didn't start, I'm just defending myself. But anyway, I made a point from that point on to lead by example. I didn't really know what a leader was. I didn't know I didn't know the definition of a leader. I just know that you go out there and you lead by example. For me, I wanted to lead in the classroom and I wanted to lead on the field. So from that point on, I set goals. My parents didn't have enough money for me to go to college, for them to pay. So I'm either to get a scholarship or you take out a bunch of loans and you can pay it back the rest of your life. So I made it a goal to go to college. I was looking at colleges like Illinois State, Northern Illinois, Eastern Illinois. Well, my sophomore year of high school, that's when I started getting recruited, but it was actually for track and field. I ran a 10-300 meter and I ran a 21-3 as a sophomore, 15 years old. So I got my first scholarship offer from Ole Miss, and that's when I became on college coach's radar. Well, my junior year, this is a funny story to me. My junior year, I was starting running back. Never played defensive back at all. So my junior year, I'm 170 pounds. They had this all-state linebacker, 6'3", 230, and I couldn't block him. Every time I went this way, he would just flat leave me. So I remember the next day, we were watching film. We ended up winning the game. We had 7 carries, 11 yards. We ended up winning the game. The head coach heard me in the back laughing when we were watching film. And he said, you know what? Get off. You're not playing running back ever again. So I'm like, what did I mean? But I didn't really understand that there was other guys looking up to me. There was other people looking at me as a leader. So the defensive coordinator, he comes over to me. He was like, you're too good of an athlete to not be playing. So he was like, do you want to play corner? I'm like, I just want to start on varsity. That was all I wanted to do was start on varsity. So they had this kid named Marcus Smith, who was the #1 junior receiver in the country. I followed him around the whole game. He had no catches. That's how I ended up playing cornerback. So high school, junior year of high school, I ended up with 48 tackles, 7 interceptions, 800 yards as a backup running back, and 25 touchdowns between defense, offense, and kick return. So my coach tells me, he was like, well, Dwayne, you're going to be one of the top players in the country. I'm like, 170 pounds. I'm looking at these other dudes on this list, like 230 pounds, 240, so I'm like, okay, so I'm still not really understanding it, but what our coach did as a junior, he didn't give us any of our letters. So I never got any letter during the season, and I go into his office, he pulls out 4 boxes full of all the letters that he collected, for that junior year. So I'm like, wow, so I'm started, and I had a great high school coach that wouldn't allow me to get big-headed. He wouldn't allow me to think I'm better than the team, so it was always team first. So I go through senior year, I was the #1 defensive back in the country. I ended up, between my 4 choices of school, I ended up Tennessee, Michigan, Notre Dame, Miami were my top 4 choices. I chose University of Tennessee just because that Peyton Manning was on the team. They just came back from being the #2 rated team in the country. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have a chance to win a national championship. So, you know, back to my senior year, we went to the senior banquet. Now I won Reebok Player of the Year. I was second in the voting for USA Today Player of the Year, first team All USA Today. You know, I didn't win one award for my high school team. Now, as a 17-year-old, I cried for him. I'm like, Coach, what happened? He was like, well, you won so many national awards. Remember, there's always a team game. So that was something that always stuck in my mind. It's always a team game. It's always a team game. So I get to the University of Tennessee now, coming from Chicago, another culture shock. I mean, I go down there, it's a bunch of hillbillies. I know they're gonna be mad at me, but it was. I mean, you go there, it was a culture shock. It was parts of the town where they told you don't go, you know, do not do this, don't venture out too far, and all that stuff. So I get there. I had a good freshman year. I had 8 turnovers. I had 6 fumble recoveries, 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown. I didn't start any games, but I'm still, it's culture shock to me. I wanted to transfer because I saw other kids around the country having freshmen. I saw them out there balling. I'm sitting here on the bench getting garbage time. So I'm like, hey, what's going on? So I wanted to transfer and all that. The coach told me, he was like, you know what? Just same similar conversation that I had with my high school coach. He was like, just stick it out and, you know, just see what happens. But he was like, we expect big things from you. He was like, you can be a senior, you can be a captain when you're a senior. And I'm like, I was a captain in high school, but I never thought of being a captain in Tennessee. I'm like, I thought about my whole goal to Tennessee, like 3 years of turn pro. That was all I wanted to do. I set goals as far as I wanted to be a national champion. I wanted to get drafted in the first round. I wanted to win a Thorpe Award. But I had no desire to graduate college. Like that wasn't something that I set forth. Like I remember my mom, she was like, well, son, you know, you need to get a college degree. And I remember sitting here having, I'm like, Mom, if I go first round, you know how much money I make? I can go back to college every time I want to. But that started being my mentality. Okay, NFL started to become the main focus. So I go sophomore year, I ended up starting at the University of Tennessee, 4 interceptions, 40-something tackles, honorable mention, all conference as a sophomore. Well, going into junior year, we lost Peyton Manning, and we lost 2 other guys first round. We lost 9 starters off our defense. So I was the only defensive secondary starter coming back. So now I'm thrust into this leadership role again. So those guys are sitting here like, I mean, we had freshmen coming in and we had to count on the play. Nobody believed in us as a team. So I know it's cliche to say, take it one game at a time, but we literally took it one game at a time. We opened up the season against Syracuse and beat them 33-34, and then a game they kind of called a fan pass and finish for us, so it helped us out. But that was the year we won the national championship, so I take it. So we just take it one game. The next game against Florida, we win in overtime. So each game we started building more and more confidence. And I mean, obviously everybody in here, well, if you follow football, you know who Peyton Manning is. So everybody told us, oh man, if they lost Peyton, they're gonna be sorry. There's nothing they can do without Peyton. And we just took it, upon ourselves, focus one game at a time. So we ended up Arkansas game. We were #1 in the country. They were rated #4. You got another good football guys looking down. The quarterback stumbled over the ball and dropped the ball with 1 minute and 50 seconds left, and we were losing the game. So we win that game in the last second drive. So we ended up getting to the national championship. And back in the 90s, like that, Florida State was the team to beat. Everybody talked about Florida State. They were top 10 for 10, 11 years in a row. So nobody gave Tennessee a chance to win the game. They had Peter Ward, who was an All-American receiver, All-World receiver, and my coach was like, you gonna follow him around the whole game. I'm like, bet, you know what I mean? I'm like, this is the time for me to shine. So I followed him around the first half. I ended up getting a pick 6, 54-yard touchdown, and I ended up tearing the ligament in my ankle. Remember I told you guys that one of my goals of mine was to turn pro as a junior. So I was the #3 rated corner in the country. There's 5 or 6 corners that get drafted in the first round every year. So I'm like, oh, I'm going first round. So before the game, my head coach comes to tell me, he was like, well, what's your plan? What are you going to do? I'm like, well, you know what I'm doing if I ball this game. You know, so he was like, so I go in, I get the interception, I run by the sideline. Like, I'm gone, coach. So, I mean, it was funny because, I mean, this is during the middle of the game. So when I tell the ligament in my ankle, now he was like, well, it's a 6-month rehab process. So now, he ran back at halftime. He ran by me going out of the field, but I was done for the game. Oh, I got you for another year. So it was a joke, but at the same time, it was a life-changing experience for me because I was able to be a captain. I was able to be a leader. I was able to etched my name in University of Tennessee history with the likes of Peyton Manning as captains, Reggie White. I mean, it's just names that when you look at captain on the 1999 team, you see me. Well, this is when I stopped setting goals. This is when my life started to change. Now, of course, I didn't know that at the time. At the time, I'm kind of arrogant, big-headed, coming off MVP of the national championship, preseason All-American, #1 rated these days. Mel Kiper had me one of the top 5. I done already started pricing out what I'm going to buy. And this actually got a whole year to play. So I'm like, man, the #5 pick last year, his signing bonus was $11 million. Man, you know what I could do? I'm hard. I'm going to get a convertible. I mean, this is all the stuff that I'm thinking about. And, you know, so, but my play on the field started to change because I no longer started doing the stuff that I was doing freshman, sophomore, junior. I wasn't diving in the piles, making the extra effort. I'm sitting here jumping over the pile so I don't roll my ankle again, you know, just stuff like that. So, senior year, we played University of Memphis. Now, Memphis, Tennessee, that's like UT, I can't even say Houston. I mean, that's like UT. I don't even want to because somebody might have went to the school. So I don't even want to, you know. So let me not even say another school. But no, but it's a lower class team, a lower level team that we should beat. Even though it's a state school as well, we should beat them very handily. We win the game 17-16, and I had family in town. So we go out, we have some drinks and all this stuff. And I remember going to this restaurant, Rocky Top Restaurant. And at Rocky Top Restaurant, they got the best wings on campus. So they usually put 16 wings in one bag. Well, this night they put I'm drunk too, man. This time they put my wings in 2 separate bags, 8 and 8. And my cousin grabbed the other bag, so I started arguing with the manager, like, where's the rest of my food? But you know, when you go out there drinking, it clouds your judgment. You know, so I go out there, I'm arguing. So basically, long story short, I got arrested for disorderly conduct. Now I got dropped, but being a senior captain, I ended up going to the head coach and saying, suspend me for the next game because this is not what leaders do. Now, the players on the team respected me for that, but I lost respect from the coaching staff because you are a leader. When you're a leader, you have to be held accountable, and your choices are supposed to be right every time. And, you know, I wanted to let them know that every choice has a consequence. So I ended up going from the Thorpe Award watch list, the #1 defensive back, to NFL scouts saying, well, he's undisciplined now. And this is just a matter of one incident. Just a matter of one incident. So I ended up finishing out the senior season. And now, mind you, I told you where my mindset was at. I'm thinking top 5. I went out and spent $100,000 on 2 cars. I hadn't got drafted yet. I hadn't even went through the draft process yet. I just know what Mel Kiper said. I'm going top 5, so I'm good. So I go out there and spend $100,000 on 2 cars. Well, going through the draft process, I've known my whole life that I've had a heart condition, that I have an enlarged heart and a heart murmur. So I get to the NFL Combine, and they say, well, Mr. Goodrich, you failed your physical. So I called my agent. I'm like, so I couldn't perform at the Combine, I couldn't do anything. They're like, we're sending you home. So I called my agent. I'm like, what does this mean? He was like, well, man, the problem is you won't get drafted. I'm like, damn, my NFL dream. What about these $100,000 cars I just bought? You know what I'm saying? So I ended up going back to a few heart specialists and finding out at the time that because I played in high school, when I played in college, it's just something that I have to monitor the rest of my life. But out of those 31 teams, Houston, Texas weren't in the league then. That's kind of shows my age. But, you know, they weren't in the league then. So out of those 31 teams, 25 teams said they wouldn't draft me at all. So out of those, the Cowboys, the Bears, and the Colts were the 3 teams that were high on my list. But now, they told me flat out, we won't draft you in the first round. So I'm like, still thinking about, man, there go these cars, you know, how can I afford these cars? But luckily, the Cowboys ended up drafting me in the 2nd round, 49th overall pick. And I can tell you guys, when I signed a 4-year deal for $2.5 million. So I was able to pay for the cars. But what happened, I stopped setting goals. You know, when I got to Dallas, my ultimate goal as a kid was to get to the NFL. I never had the goal once I got to the NFL to be an all-pro, to be a captain of the Cowboys, to be a leader of the Cowboys. I was just happy to be one of the guys. And by me stop setting goals, that allowed temptation, that allowed me to go from being a leader to a follower, that allowed me to experiment with drugs. And I want you guys to know, this is not easy for me talking up here. It's not easy. I'm not a people person. I really don't like people, but I feel like I don't. This is definitely hard to do, and especially it's hard when I talk to you guys about the accident. I mean, I get emotional. I was emotional over there watching it, But I know that if I can change one person in this room, I know that it's working. And I know that somebody is gonna be like, I want you guys to think when I make a bad choice, or man, you might not remember my name, you might just remember the Cowboy football player that came and talked to me. And I hope you guys make different decisions. Okay, well, back to the story. Let me get back on point. So, you know, I get to Dallas, and by not setting goals, it was a nightmare for me. I mean, it was probably the worst time of my life. Although most people think, man, you had money, you had this, money changed a lot of things. My family members changed. You know, I remember going through my rookie year, and family members called me like, hey, can I get $27,000? I'm like looking, I'm like, what would you do if I didn't make it? You know what I'm saying? But it's just, those are the type of things you face with. You face with temptation from women. You face with women wanting to be around you. You face with your boys wanting to be around you. I had one of my cousins who ended up living with me, and to the life of me, I couldn't understand why every girl I meet and I started dating seriously, he'd be like, I don't like her. But he said that he didn't like her because that affected him. That affected him going out kicking it. That affected him getting into parties for free. That affected him drinking for free. So he didn't have my best interest at heart. You know, so I go through Dallas, I go through my first year, I tear my hamstring. So I missed 11 to 12 games my rookie year. So I come back my second year, I come back ready to go. I get back in shape, get my hamstring back right. I ended up getting a starting job for the whole season the day before I tore my Achilles tendon. So they said, you're the starter for the whole year. So I get the job, boom. I'm out of practice the next day, make a routine play, go back to playing my Achilles tendon. So I missed the entire second year in 2001. So now 2002, I set goals again. I'm like, okay, everybody's doubting me. They said, you can't run, there's no way you can get back to a 4.3. So I ended up putting on 10 pounds of muscle. I went from 207 to 217, solid muscle, ran a 4.39, 7 months after I tore my Achilles. They ended up drafting 3 DBs that year. I still made the team, but once I made the team, you know what I did? I went out and bought a new car. Once I made the team, no, I did. I went out and bought a new car. I went and bought a 745 BMW. So I'm like, you know what? That's a reward to myself. And then I didn't set season goals. My goal, once again, was short term. It was just make the team. That's all I wanted to do was make the team. So I made the team. I ended up messing my shoulder up, but we knew that Coach Campbell was going to get fired. So they're like, man, you got to play through it. You got to do this. You want the new coach to come in and say, this is a guy that I could depend on. And the next year was going to be my contract year. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to focus this year. So I ended up having a decent third year. It wasn't anything it was nothing I'm really proud of, but it was a decent third year. I didn't get hurt, didn't miss any games. So after the offseason, Coach Campbell got fired. So I'm like, yeah, it's a fresh new start. And so I was either going to stay with the Cowboys or try to get traded to Houston just for a real live fresh start. So the night of January 13, 2003, I'm with a few buddies of mine. We decided we're going to go to the Olive Garden, have some dinner, and have a few drinks. So I go to the Olive Garden, have 2 drinks, about 7:30. Then we decide to head to 2 clubs, and I had 2 more drinks at the 2 clubs. At about 11, I stopped drinking, so I'm like, I have to drive home. So I ended up leaving the club at 2 o'clock, 2:15 in the morning. Now as I'm headed home, I'm doing about 80, following behind the SUV, and she slammed on her brakes this way, and when I slammed on my brakes this way, it was a car stalled the road. And that's when I'm like, okay, I can't go this way because there's an 18-wheeler still going by about 15, 20 miles an hour. So I went this way in the 5th lane, and in the 5th lane, that's when you had 3 men, DeMont Matthews, Shifty Joseph, and Joseph Wood, standing there. I hit all three of the men. Joseph Wood died on the way to the hospital. DeMont Matthews died at the scene, and Shifty Joseph fractured his lower leg. So I left the scene. I left the scene. I went home because I panicked. I went home and I called my mom, and she was like, son, have you been drinking? I'm like, yes, ma'am, I've been drinking. So she was like, well, we need to start the process of turning yourself in. So my mom flew down to Dallas. My dad came 2 days later. My brothers came. And that was a hard process to go through. I mean, it was a hard process. I didn't really understand what I was going through. Don't get me wrong, I knew something was wrong, but really didn't want to internalize it and really think it was real. So I went through the whole process. I turned myself in the next day. I actually got charged with manslaughter and went through the whole process of the court proceeding. I got convicted August 20th, 2003 to 7.5 years of criminal negligent homicide with a deadly weapon. I bonded back out on an appeal bond just because I didn't want to go to prison. I believe what the lawyers had told me. You can fight this, you can beat this, but that was, obviously I know that was the worst mistake for me. I should have went ahead and got started with my time and, you know, made amends to that, but I was still dealing with a lot of stuff. So I went through the whole process of then. It was a dark time in my life, the time, because I stayed on an appeal bond for 2.5 years. So I stayed out, I couldn't work, couldn't go back to school, couldn't do anything like that. So I was literally just sitting there depressed. You know, I went through battles where I thought about killing myself. I mean, it was quick though. It wasn't long. I kind of love me. It was quick though. But no, it definitely crossed my mind. You know, just going through that, you don't really know how to handle that. So I remember the judge calling me October 11th, and she said, "Dwayne, you lost your appeal. You got to turn yourself in." So I'm thinking that she's gonna give me a few weeks. I'm like, okay, well, because my daughter, my girl was pregnant, so my son was gonna be born in the next few weeks. So I'm like, well, can I wait till my son's born? She was like, no, you gotta turn yourself in tomorrow at 8:30. I'm like, oh, you know, so I went. So I remember going to turn myself in, and the crazy thing about it, I was never a religious person. I was one of those people that always kind of felt like when there was something good going on, I'm like, look at me, look at me. When there was something bad, I'm like, oh, Lord help me. Oh, Lord help me. So I remember the first day when I was sitting in that cell, I just felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulder just because it was like, you got this, you have this over with now. Now you can get started in another phase of your life. Now you don't have to be depressed about wondering what's going to happen. You know what you're facing. You know, I didn't know if I would do the full 12.5 years. I didn't know if I would do 6 years. I didn't know if I would do 4 years. I just know that I was ready to get this part of my life over with. So, you know, I went turned myself in. I stayed in the county jail for 10 months because I had a civil trial, which I lost the civil trial. I had to pay $5.5 million to the victims' families. Then I got convicted again of failure to stop and render raid because obviously I didn't stop. So I wasn't going to try to fight that through another court proceeding. You know, I'm going to man up and start accepting the responsibility, accepting what I did, and say, you know what, I did it, let's get it over with. So, you know, I go down to Texas prison, to the prison that you guys saw in there, and that's where I started to figure out, okay, what goals will I set? What goals will I set in prison? How can I become a better man? So I saw a lot of young black men there in prison. A lot of young black men that wanted somebody to look up to. So I'm like, you know what? I want them to look up to me. I want to be the leader that I know God called me to be. I want to be the leader that I was in high school. I want to be the leader that I was in college for my first 3 years. So I decided at that point to change my life. I decided to get up every day, go to work, the person that I was raised to be, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. And in a place like that, you don't hear that often. You don't hear somebody who's a strong individual say that on a daily basis. Get up and go to work. I got up and went to work every day at 6 in the morning to 5 o'clock. And for me, that was peaceful to me because I didn't have to deal with knuckleheads running around doing what knuckleheads do. So I wanted to go out there and be that positive example. So at this point, I'm still not a people person. At this point in my life, I never talked about my story. So I remember one day, the warden in the prison was like, hey, Dwayne, we're starting this new program called Life Skills. I'm like, well, what do y'all do? He was like, well, you get up there. It was like a DUI class, a DUI, minor possession, minor consumption. So I'm like, man, I don't really want to talk to anybody about, especially what I've been through. I'm like, this already humiliating enough being in prison, going from top professional athlete to prison. I'm like, man, I'm not trying to do it. He was like, well, I just need you to come and listen. Well, he know me, and he knew, like, he got a chance to really get to know me, so he knew once I got there, he knew that I would try to get up there and at least say something. So I remember going, and it was a guy named Jeremy. Jeremy got up there and told his story about how he got convicted of a DUI. He ended up killing his probation officer in an accident. So I'm like, wow, that's deep. And I never heard Jeremy's story, you know, so I'm like, oh. So I get up there, and I try to tell my story. I get up there, and I literally cried for 30 minutes. I mean, snot coming out my nose, I'm just letting it go. But for me, that was a part of the healing process. That was something that I've never really told anybody before. So just to get out there and just share that story and see how people reacted, I'm like, this is my call. And I'm like, you know, it got a little bit easier. It's never easy. It got a little bit easier to get up there and tell my story. But it's more gratifying because now I can sit there and see the reaction of people, and I know that I'm changing somebody's life out there. So I'm still dealing with my own demons when I'm in prison, because you go through a process like that, you lose so-called friends. All the same people who were hanging around me when I was making money and playing for the Cowboys, they told me, I got your back, anything you need. I'll write them a letter, would never hear from you. So, so I had bitterness in my heart. I had a lot of bitterness in my heart. I'm like, man, I'm not messing with nobody when I get out. I don't want to talk to nobody. So I would be, but at the same time, I'm praying, because the Matthews family and Shooky Joseph forgave me. So, Joseph Wood's mother was like, I will never forgive him. I will never, So I'm like, okay, well. So I'm in church. I'm praying for her forgiveness and all that. So one of the guys that was in there with me, he was like, Dwayne, I hear you always praying. I know how you feel about Miss Woods forgiving you, but now let this sink into you guys. He said, I hear you praying for Miss Woods to forgive you for taking her son's life, but you can't forgive somebody for not writing you or not coming to see you. And to me, that was like the eye-opening experience that I had to deal with in life. Because I'm like, wow, I committed the ultimate sin, and here I am holding grudges on somebody who not writing me, or not sending me money, or not doing this. So that's when I decided to really just focus, make sure that I set goals, make sure that I just do exactly what I'm supposed to do to be the best father I can be, the best friend I can be, the best future husband I can be. So I go through the rest of my time. I ended up making my first parole with no disciplinary cases in prison, led by example. Then I came up on the second charge of failure to stop and render aid. And I actually got a year, I got denied parole for a year. So I'm like, man, what am I doing wrong? And I'm like, that was just another, I feel like that was just the devil. Like, okay, let's see how you react to this. Let's see if let's say you stop setting goals. But you know what I did the same day I got that, got up the next day and continued on, just continued pushing like I've always done since I've been there. So I ended up getting released October 11th. October 5th, 2011, sorry. So when I get home, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? So I set goals. I set short-term goals. I set long-term goals. And one of my biggest goals was to get my degree. Go back to college and get my degree. So I get out, and I contact the University of Tennessee, and they made me go through an extensive process. I had to do a 10-page essay on my life, the accident, how can I be a better person in the world, how can I be a better person on campus. So I ended up getting accepted to school December 15, 2012. I enrolled in class January 7, 2013. I actually walked the ceremony in May 9th of this year, and I actually become an official college graduate Friday, my last day of class. I'm definitely proud of that. That's probably one of my proudest moments. And I talked to my mom, I'm like, yeah, I finally did it, and stuff like that. So she's definitely a proud mother right now. But I guess what I want to just share with you guys, what I want you guys to do for me is write down your goals, short-term and long-term. And short-term, since all you guys are in high school, let's keep it in high school. And then long-term, let's do college. And then college and maybe what you want to do after that. And I'm going to need a few volunteers to share your story too. I'm going to share your goals, if that's okay. That's it? You only wrote one line? Or you already writing? No, I'm just messing. I ain't going to call it out. And parents, you guys are thinking about your goals as well. I think that's something that we need to focus on as parents, which is our goals all the time. I know that's important for me, and I make my kids write down their goals, and we hold each other accountable. So that's something that parents can definitely think about. Can I get 4 volunteers? You come up here. I mean, I don't know if that's a part of the program, but I'm running stuff right now, so you good. Am I good? Yeah, all right. I should have checked first. No, that's cool. I'm gonna need your goal list too. You got them down. Oh man, I like you. What's your name? Chris. How you doing, Chris? No, you can talk now. Can I get 3 more volunteers? Come on. That'll work. And we need 1 more. This about you guys, so we want to hear what you guys have to say. It's not about us. It's about us sharing our stories. You go first. Name.
My name is Chris.
What school do you go to?
I go to Calhoun High School.
Okay.
I'm a senior.
Okay, good.
Obviously I hope to graduate. But when I go to college, I love math. So I want to be a math teacher. I love kids. I also like music. So it's definitely continue to be in music somehow in my college life. I love working with kids, so I want to be a math professor, maybe at college. Definitely teach high school kids at some point.
Okay, awesome. Hey, who are your favorite artists? Musician.
Fun fact, I play steel drums. One of my favorite artists of all time is a guy, I actually have been taught by him. His name is C.J. Mingy. He's one of the lead steel drum, I could say introduction into the U.S.
Okay.
So he's probably my favorite artist.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks a lot. Name, short-term and long-term goals.
My name is Jolie, and my short-term goals would be.
I'm sorry, school.
Huh?
School.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
School is Hedda High.
Okay.
My short-term goals would be varsity all 4 years for soccer. Graduate, obviously. And then long-term goals would be go to a good college and be a professional athlete.
That'll work. Good job. Okay, school, short-term, long-term goals.
My name is Zachary, and I go to Del Valley High School, and my short term is get a 4-year scholarship to any college I want to go to. My long term is graduate college, become a lawyer, and have a good life.
Absolutely.
My name is Gregory. I go to Florida High School. My short-term goal is to graduate with a 3.8 and go to Sam Houston State. And then after that, my long-term goal is to be a homicide.
Awesome. In the right place. In the right place. Thank you. Thank you. And what I do is encourage you guys to write those goals down and put them somewhere that you see them every day. When I was growing up as a kid, I take the goals to my mirror. In high school and college, I take those goals to my mirror. So I woke up every day when I had to brush my teeth. I woke up every day to see what those goals were, to know what I need to do that day to accomplish those goals and never get off track. And like I once said, when I got to Dallas, I didn't set goals. I didn't have anything to look at. So I know that definitely setting goals for me is probably one of the most important things in my life, because it allows me to be focused, and still to this day I have to set goals. So I want to open the floor up to you. I want to hear you guys. I want to hear what kind of questions you have for me, and I'll be as transparent as I can be and let you guys know from the bottom of my heart what I've done. I don't sugarcoat anything. Your life is not going to sugarcoat anything. It doesn't care what color you are. It doesn't care how much money you make. It doesn't care where you come from. You got the choices, and every choice that you make has a consequence. So, like I say, it doesn't care about anything. It doesn't care if you're from East Austin, West Austin, Chicago, Florida, or anything like that. So I want to hear you guys. Any questions that you have for me, feel free to ask. Anybody? Parents are here, so they don't want to ask any questions. Yes?
If you could go back and change one thing, what would you change?
I have too many to change, but no, obviously the accident was the most, but it wasn't, I think, a lot of people say it was just one night, it was just one mistake, but to be honest with you, I did that same thing so many times that night, and that's what gave me a false sense of confidence that I was okay. So I had 2 or 3 drinks, so I'm okay to drive home. So I would have changed never ever getting behind the wheel after I had a drink. Not one drink, because that one drink can alter your life obviously look at me, it altered my life for I've been dealing with the last 11 years. So it wasn't just that one night for me. It was the nights leading up to that, the false sense of security. Like, oh well, I drive okay. I had two drinks, so it would definitely be to make that choice to never get behind the wheel after I had something to drink. Yes, sir.
Did you have like a best friend that has never like left you before, or maybe someone who like you always can go to, even like throughout your whole life? Like,
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I have a bunch of people, but the thing is, like, what I went through, I never had somebody that could just really hold me accountable and really just like put their foot down. It was because most of the people that, like I said earlier, they were reaping the benefits off of my success as well. So they wouldn't really tell me what I really needed to hear. They would tell me kind of what I want to hear, like, oh man, it's not that bad, it's not that. So I had, like, my brother was always, you need to slow down, you need to do this, but me being, I got drafted to Dallas at 21 years old, so I mean 21 and you just handed me the money, like, oh, here, take this money. That was a bad mixture. Like, I went from going from a structured environment, like, I don't know, you guys, high school and college is a very structured environment. When you become grown, you no longer have your parents, or you no longer have a coach telling you, oh boy, get up, go to class, get up and do this, get up and do that, you know, make sure you do this. So when you become an adult, at 21, 22 years old, you have to deal with a lot of different responsibilities, paying taxes, making the right decision all the time, getting up and going to work on your own, being self-motivated. So for me, that was a bad mix because there was nobody there to like I was used to that structure of mom, dad, coach, teammate holding me accountable. When I got to Dallas, it was you hold yourself accountable. So I felt like as long as I showed up to work, I was okay. So I've had those people in my corner, but nobody really kind of put their foot down. But even if they tried, I would have just dismissed it like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not in my shoes. So it was more me than anything else. Anyone? Yes, right there. Either one.
Do you have goals for quit?
Yes, I do. Continue going around the country sharing my story, and I'm actually working on a nonprofit organization to help out ex-felons with job training and job placement. So those are my goals, and that's when I'm starting a company from the ground up in Dallas. I'm actually moving back to Dallas next week to get started. So, yes.
What do you think was the most life-changing part of your experience?
Not being just my kids, just seeing them like coming to see me. My son actually being born when I was in prison. I didn't get a chance to hold my son until he was 2 years old. And then I remember one day my daughter came to visit me, and you know, 7-year-old, she came to visit me. She was 7, and she looked at me and she said, "Daddy," like she didn't know years and months. She said, "Daddy, you've been gone a lot of days." You know, and it's just, I mean, it made me like really want to be there for my kids and want my kids to have somebody to be proud of. I didn't want my kids, because of course they have my last name. I didn't want them to have to go through, oh, well, your dad is the Cowboy player that killed those people in the accident. So for me, it was to do something after I went through all this stuff to make my kids proud. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
But have you contacted the Cowboys to talk to, like, to come in and talk to their new recruits or anything like that?
Yeah, I go talk to them every year. Yeah, I go talk to them every year. I've been to Florida State, Virginia Tech, Tennessee, LSU, Detroit Lions, the Cowboys. So I've been around, just kind of, and I'm working on a program as well to go out there and help some of these college athletes. Because I mean, so they need to see somebody like myself. They need to see other people who's willing to tell their story and who've been in the same places that they are. You know, I forgot to tell you guys about a story about Chris Carter. You know, Chris Carter came to Tennessee when I was 19 years old. And Chris Carter, we knew he was Hall of Fame, All-Pro receiver. And Chris Carter, I mean, I guess I can share his story with him because it's public. So Chris was addicted to cocaine early when he was in the league, playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. Buddy Ryan cut him. And, you know, Minnesota picked him up and gave him another chance. He turned his life around, ended up being an All-Pro, ended up electing him to the Hall of Fame last year. Well, Chris was up there talking to us, and I'm 19 years old. He was talking about cocaine. And I'm like, what are you talking about cocaine? I don't do cocaine. I'm like, he was talking about a vice. So his vice was actually cocaine. And what I didn't get from that is that your vice could be anything. Your vice could be alcohol. It could be drugs. It could be women. It could be peer pressure. So just think about that. So it's like the devil won't come to you in a way of, oh, the same thing, it came to Chris Carter. It'll come to you in many different forms. And that's what, it took me a while to look back at that and realize actually what Chris was talking about. And the same thing I want you guys to realize, like, none of you might drink. I mean, I'm sure somebody in here will experiment with alcohol and stuff like that, but you don't take just the alcohol about my life or the drinking or the partying or anything like that. Just take the message that anything can happen to alter your life. I mean, we saw the kids in Texas the last few weeks. I mean, this, 11 or 12 kids have been kicked off the team since the new coaches got here, so it can be anything that can happen. I got time for one more question.
You have 25 minutes.
Oh, okay, my bad. Oh, I got a bunch of questions there. Okay. No. I know you got one. Y'all two got one down there.
Okay, 6, like, the accident about prison or whatever. And did you ever drink and drive?
No. It's not even an option. She hasn't ever drink and drive since I've been out of prison and all that. No, it's not an option. I know. Yes, sir.
Are you open with your children about what happened?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I don't want them to hear it from anybody else. I mean, I think for me, that's the way parenting is supposed to be. It's not too open with them, but I mean, I'm not going to just sit there and tell them every single detail about everything I've been through, but I'll tell them the important parts just so they know and don't have to hear from anybody else. Just so I don't want my daughter to run into a guy that's going to tell her something that daddy didn't tell her.
What degree did you get?
Criminal justice. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Did you do track in college?
Yeah, I ran track for my first year, and I ran a 10-4, and I was the last person in the heat, so I ran one track meet, and that was it. And that was it. They were real fast. You couldn't go back and forth from track to football like that. It was too hard. I wasn't fast enough for that. Yes, ma'am.
Whenever you were in prison, did your high school coach like ever reach out?
Yeah, they did. High school coach, college coach, high school, the Cowboys, everybody reached out to me and just made sure that, you had a second chance, and you'll definitely get a second chance in life. And, for me, that was a lot of my motivating factors, just knowing that I had support there. And that's kind of what's motivating me now to go out there and give other young men a second chance, just because I know that I can get back in school. I know that I had a strong support system out there, and I know not a lot of people have that. So that's definitely my motivating factor. Yes, ma'am.
Was there ever a point that you realized you were hanging around the wrong crowd or just making opposite or
Yeah, it was a point. Like when I got to Dallas and I knew I was doing stuff that I had no business doing. I knew I was hanging out till 2:30, 3 in the morning, and then go to practice at 5, 6 in the morning. I knew I was running with the wrong crowd and times like that. But at the same time, I'm still like, okay, I can bounce back. I can do this. I mean, it was like, for me, it was just an ego thing, and ego, too much money and too much free time for me. So I'm like, yeah, I can get it together and fix it. But yeah, I definitely knew that I was running with the wrong crowd. I'm like, oh, I got it under control. I grew up in Chicago. So we got it, like, growing up in Chicago, you feel like you can tackle any obstacle. So I'm like, you know what? I can do this and be okay with it. But obviously I couldn't. Yes, ma'am.
If you could go back to the day of the accident, would you have stayed?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would. I mean, obviously that was one of the biggest things that haunt me about that night. Obviously getting behind the wheel first and foremost, but definitely leaving the scene, because now that raised a bunch of speculation that I was drunk and, I ran because I was trying to hide something, but I definitely would have stayed. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think your kids are likely to make the same mistakes that you did over the years?
I'm gonna try to teach them. I'm gonna try to teach them right from wrong and let them make their own decisions. But I hope not. I mean, right now my kids can't stand the sight of alcohol, and I'm proud of that right now. They're 11 and 8, so we hope they stick with that. We hope we stick with that formula. But people are gonna make their choices, but I'm gonna just teach my kids that every choice has a consequence, whether it's good or bad. So if you go out there and make a choice that's bad, just know that you have to live with the consequences of those. Yes, sir.
Bullying is a big deal. It's even in pro football. A guy from Miami this individual that just got drafted to Cleveland that came out that he's gay. And I know that individuals here at school go through bullying or they see it. Can you give them some advice on how to address those situations?
I think that comes down to leadership. I think when you're a leader, it's just like, I mean, I don't really deal with bullying. I mean, of course, growing up as kids, we tease each other, stuff like that. But as always being a leader and always being a kind of an alpha male, it was easy for me to diffuse a lot of situations just by like, hey, man, y'all need to chill. Y'all need to cut that out, stuff like that. So, you know, I feel like bullying, like for me growing up, it wasn't really a big deal because that's all we knew, you know. But I think the kids nowadays with social media and all that kind of stuff, like the bullying is, I mean, it's just, I get bullied on the internet now, you know what I mean? It's just reading news feeds or reading comment feeds about my life and the things that I went through. So people can be whoever they want to be behind the internet and stuff like that. So I think the bullying for you guys is more prevalent on the internet. On the internet, just saying something about this girl or saying something about this guy and stuff like that. So it's just, if you're a strong individual, you have to speak up. You have to speak up, and I mean, you know right from wrong. And if somebody is getting bullied, just hey, man, that's not right and stuff like that. You won't look like a coward. You won't look weak and stuff. So it's definitely something. I think that the stronger individuals. I think people know who's the stronger individuals. The popular kids in class are the ones that can dictate a lot of stuff, and they can diffuse a lot of situations before it even starts. Yes, ma'am.
Do you keep in contact with the families? And has the woman that said she would never forgive you, that she forgave you?
Yes, she did forgive me, but I'm actually still on parole. I actually get off parole October 28th for this year, so I can't have any contact with the families at all. But she did say she forgave me, so that was definitely an important moment in my life. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Do you think you'd be the person you are today if the accident wouldn't have happened?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I kind of get asked. I get asked here, do I think I'll be the person who I am today if the accident would never happen? No, I wouldn't. I mean, I was going through such a dark point in my life that, I mean, God knows where I would have been. I mean, I thought, of course, I think that, man, I would have been straight. I would have been, you know, I was getting my life together and stuff like that, but it was still a major part of my life. So who knows? But I mean, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't a people person, so I wasn't out there sharing who I was as an NFL player. I didn't go to schools and try to give back or anything like that. It was just so, I was focused on my little bubble. I was very selfish. I thought I was giving and caring and loving. I was giving and caring and loving to the wrong people. Like to the friends and so-called hanger-ons. That's who I wanted to get the attention from when I could have and should have been doing more for the community and stuff like that. So I definitely don't think I would have been the man who I am today. I have a question over there. Yes, sir.
What's the biggest thing you miss about being
The team. I've always been on a team. I've always been around my brothers. I've always been one of the guys, just not being in the locker room. I mean, of course, the training camps. I remember sitting there when I was in prison one August, and in prison, like, there's no air conditioning. And I'm just like, man, here I am sitting in a cell, and I would just love to just be in training camp, 100-degree weather, sitting there sweating with my teammates and stuff like that. So definitely just the team atmosphere, the bonding and competing. That's what I miss the most. Yes, sir.
Did you ever talk to Peyton a lot?
Yeah, I talked to Peyton about 2 weeks ago before training camp. So he comes back, and I actually live in Tennessee, so he comes back about once a month and throw the football around and stuff. He's a great man. Yes, ma'am.
Who instilled the importance of setting goals for you? And two-part question. And who was your support system throughout your incarceration?
My mom and my dad were the ones that were influential in setting goals and just always making sure that I had those goals set. And actually, my mom moved to Tennessee when I went there. So when she moved back to Chicago my junior year, so when most kids get that freedom of mom and dad didn't get home when they get to college, I didn't get that freedom until she went back, and hence to where I lost the goals. And I lost the drive as soon as mom left. Because mom, you know, she was getting that butt. At 19, 20 years old, I'm still messing up. So for me, and I remember my mom, I had a conversation with her when I got drafted. And she was like, well, babe, you want me to come to Dallas? I'm like, did you really just asked me that? I'm like, I'm 21 now, I'm grown. No, you go back to, you stay in Chicago and live life like that, but like when somebody like asked me what was one of the biggest things, I wish I would have had my mom come down and with this. Childish as that may seem, when you're 21 years old, that's what I needed. I needed that guidance. I needed that person that's going to be in my ear, that's going to say, hey man, you doing this wrong. And she knew something was going on, but she was like, I'm going to let you make your own mistakes. I'm going to let you, and I feel like that was, I feel like I needed that, but obviously I wish I would have had my mom there. So definitely my parents instilled those goals, and my mom, she was my definitely biggest supporter when I was in prison.
What do you think the appeal was for hanging out with the wrong crowd?
I think, she asked, what do I think the appeal was for hanging out with the wrong crowd? I think when you get, I think our generation, well, your generation is different than mine. I guess I feel like I'm still young at heart sometimes, but I feel like watching TV. I came up in the hip hop era. I came up in the hip hop era when you had Jay-Z, you had all these fancy music videos and people popping champagne, doing all this. So I got this concept that the NFL life was supposed to be just like that. I felt like it was supposed to be, you go out there and ball on Sundays, and the rest of the time it was supposed to be a party. So I think I got influenced a lot by the media culture of what it's like to have money, what it's like to be a professional athlete. And I think it was like, well, I'm trying to relive a music video every time I went out. So I think that was definite, like a definite influence in my life. Anybody else? Well, thank you. No, yes, sir.
What made you want to like go out and talk to groups like this and tell about your story?
That one day that I cried for 30 minutes was a definite eye-opening experience and life-changing experience for me. So, because I don't know whether you guys would know this, but being an inmate, you're never supposed to touch a regular person. You're never supposed to touch a free world person. So the warden, like I'm crying, and it's like this lady just came up and just consoled me, and it was like, that was like a moment. I haven't touched a woman in 3 years, so it was like, but but she did. She came up and she just held me and was crying with me, and she was like, your story, your heart, your passion, it makes me want to change. It makes me want to do better. And for me, that was like somebody just came and touched me. I get, like, believe it or not, I get more satisfaction out of this than I did playing at Texas Stadium, playing at the University of Tennessee in front of 100,000 people, because they're cheering for a kind of football. They're cheering for a sport. This here is life-changing. If I can change a life, that's more than running down the field, scoring a touchdown for a fan, or doing that. So this, definitely, this is what I want to do, and that's kind of what makes me passionate about going out here and doing it. Well, if I leave you guys with anything, please set goals. Please set goals. Make sure you look at those goals on a daily basis. And I just want to thank you for your time. I really enjoyed this, and I hope you guys have me again. For real. I'll be here. If you guys got any questions that you might not want a parent to hear, if you got any issues that you're dealing with, the guys, you can take my number down, hit me up anytime you want, follow me on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just an open book, man. Anything you guys want to know, just let me know. I'm here for you. Thanks a lot.
I think we've all made mistakes at one time or another. You know how hard it is to admit to it. It's even harder to talk about it. Another big round of applause for Dwayne Goodrich.